Go for it. The whole leech area is the area that's torn.
Continuing our series on sailing the coast of Croatia, we depart the port of Sali and sail north to Zadar.
We have some great wind. We're going 9-1 right now. 9-2. Woohoo! So, good. You having fun, Captain?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty. This is the island of Uglion over here.
Zadar, like Trogir, is less busy and feels more local than the big-name Croatian tourist sites. We visited the old city center at night, in the company of gaggles of young people, all here to enjoy the break from the day's heat. Zadar was heavily damaged by Allied bombers during World War II, but was beautifully rebuilt with an especially broad promenade, complete with a wave organ. It is a city that seems proud of its historical context, yet also trying to stay up to date with live music and a contemporary light show. But our real reason for visiting Zadar was to welcome on board our friends Emmy, Graham, and Sarah. Emmy had sailed with us last year as we crossed from mainland France to the island of Corsica and down the west coast to Bonifacio. This was the first time Graham, technically my first cousin once removed, and his wife Sarah had been on board Sea Rose, but they were no strangers to sailing, owning their own sailboat in British Columbia. We wasted no time starting our adventure, heading north to the town of Molat on the island of the same name, a broad anchorage with shallow, sandy depths perfect for many boats to anchor a safe distance from each other. Like Zadar, Molat's World War II past is ever present, with the remains of a 20,000-person concentration camp run by Italian fascists on the walk into town. I appreciated the reminder of these days of past evils, while having the present-day freedom to visit this peace-loving country and the time to photograph the gracefulness of butterflies on a warm summer day, as well as the serenity of a gentle paddleboard around the harbor. We again pointed Sea Rose's bow north for a 25-mile leg to the island of Ilovik. To our delight, we found an actual sandy beach, a true rarity in Croatia. Nestled in the cove with us were a number of small inflatables and runabouts, all of which vanished as evening approached. With nothing on shore except a few beach umbrellas and a majority of privately owned instead of chartered sailboats around us, this was starting to feel more off the beaten path. The water was as clear as an aquarium, and with the sun high above, it produced a kind of crinkly, broken glass shadow effect on the seafloor. We threw on our snorkeling gear and dove overboard to explore this underwater world further. Hearing a tip about a cave just north of Ilovik, we headed out the next morning to see if we could find it. Sure enough, at Uvala Balvanita, there was a cave, but owing to its diminutive size, probably more accurately called a cave in training. Underwhelmed as we were, I started exploring nearby and felt the common refrain run through my head, when one door closes, another opens.
You want to leave this place where we grew up, this old town, just put it all behind. remember you and I would always find somewhere to hide when we were kids, so we could see and hear the water run. The river's gonna cry when you're gone. Won't you miss the ones you know? I'll be here hanging on.
Balvanita marked our most northerly destination for the summer. We turned and sailed south for an overnight at the island of Ist. The harbor was deeply indented here and provided enough space for plenty of boats. Shaped a bit like a butterfly, the island's main town is concentrated at the narrow isthmus, under the watchful eye of a chapel on the eastern hill. Our timing didn't permit a hike to the top, but I sent our trusty drone to check it out nonetheless.
Gone, 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 gone. River's gonna cry when you're. River's gonna cry when you're. River's gonna cry when you're gone.
The town itself was a beautifully peaceful combination of narrow streets lined with pink and white oleander, and proud memorials to their war-torn citizens. Our walk took us by an outdoor restaurant advertising their wares with a piglet cooking on a rotisserie, and that solved our dilemma for dinner. In addition to piglet, I introduced Graham to octopus Pekka, and I began to worry he was liking it too much.
Go for it.
With a morning run to wear off the richness of last night's dinner, we continued our trek south, this time on a long 30-mile run down the outside of Dugi Otok, taking time to appreciate the cliffs here again from the water level, and then back into the Telascica National Park at Uvala Mur. Always a lot less stressful the second time around, we promptly picked up a mooring, took a hike ashore, and managed to find Tony again for a fresh loaf of bread, although Tony looked a little different than the last Tony. After combining the bread with some tasty barbecued sausages, we were all pretty beat from the long day and turned in shortly after dinner cleanup, which was probably a good thing, as we got a middle-of-the-night wake-up call with sudden gusts to 30 knots and the sound of the Code Zero spontaneously unfurling on its own, cracking in the wind like a shotgun. In an instant, the Code Zero was being ripped to pieces before we could cut it with knives and wrestle it down to the deck. Through it all, the mast was shaking so violently I thought we were going to lose the whole rig. It was not our proudest moment as sailors, and one of several scary moments we had while in Croatia. I write about the experience in more detail and the lessons we learned on our blog, which is linked here and in the video description below. Thankfully, in the morning we had clear skies and calm sailing conditions, which carried us down through Kornati for a delightful lunch stop at the town of Rulja, where we felt like royalty being picked up by the restaurant's water taxi, run by the same person who would be our waiter, before eventually sailing on to the town of Murter along the mainland. We expected Murter and neighboring Bertina to be not much more than a place to disembark for Emmy, Graham, and Sarah, but it ended up having its own style of Croatian charm, with a lively evening marketplace at the waterfront. And we put a cherry on the top of it by securing a table with a sunset view over the harbor and a chance to say our farewells as Emmy returned to the States and Graham and Sarah continued their travels on land. And that would be the end of my story of their visit. However, I didn't mention that Emmy had been fighting a protracted battle with colon cancer for over 10 years, and sadly, she succumbed to the disease just 2 months after returning home. We were so grateful that she was still able to experience Croatian sailing, but very sad to have lost a good friend. Many of you watching this will have not known Emmy, but if you do know a woman who is adventurous, athletic, driven, always willing to listen, and appreciated for her logic and common sense, then you have known the good friend that we have lost. Emmy, you were a consistent source of calm and a voice of reason in an often confusing world. My life is all the richer for knowing you. Your battle is finally over, and I hope that you now can find peace once again. This concludes our series on sailing the coast of Croatia. I hope you've enjoyed learning about this unique cruising destination, and as always, we appreciate reading your comments. From Croatia, we move on down the Adriatic to Montenegro, and finally to Corfu. And if you've grown tired of my voice, you get to hear Karen take over guiding us through the Greek waters. Don't forget to subscribe, and click on the bell to be notified of our upcoming releases.